Yes. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can. Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Garrett Soldano, and I'm excited to have Miss Meghan Reckling back on the show to talk about Michigan politics. We're going to dabble into homesteading. We're just going to solve all the world's problems here in the next 40 minutes. So, Meghan, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with all of us here on the show this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on again. I'm excited.
Yeah, so we got to get the elephant out of the room immediately, because a lot went down here in convention, the Michigan GOP convention this past weekend, with our new chair, with Jim Rumstead. And so I kind of want to dabble into your thoughts of that, of what kind of happened, and, you know, the future of the Michigan GOP.
Let's just start with the heavy, right? It's a loaded question.
Right in there.
Right off the bat. Well, to me, it was pretty clear walking around the convention hall. First and foremost, the delegates absolutely support President Trump. They love what he's doing on a national level. I think he is setting the tone for every administration that's going to come after him. But the delegates also had a very clear message, which is stay out of our party politics. And they had absolutely no problem bucking the president's personal pick for state party chair to elect somebody that they felt was going to put them in a better position to win in 2026. And that's kind of really what I saw happen.
And they did the same thing in the last cycle, too, with Matt DePerno.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
So I think the delegates have spoken, just like what you just said, like, hey, stay out of Michigan. We got this. And, I can support what they're thinking, because, with me and with endorsements and stuff, I always urge my supporters, that who cares who endorses who? You have to do your own due diligence. You have to do the research. You have to listen to the interviews and everything else, and make an educated, empowered decision on who you want to support. And I think that's perfectly fine.
I saw, I've been around party politics for over 20 years now. So I've seen a lot of chairs races. I've seen a lot of really nasty inter-party drama. This was the first time where usually you have little cliques or little groups of people, little factions of friends or people that have worked together, either, for a Republican club or a county party, who kind of all glom together to support a candidate. This is the first time where it was very unpredictable. There were people who were friends that have been friends for a long time that traditionally have supported the same candidate that were all supporting somebody different. All three candidates had very different things that they were offering as party chair, different experiences, different levels of relationships already built with the delegates. I think different styles of what they would have done or how they will be as state party chair. And so it was very interesting to watch how people siphoned off into the little groups that they supported. And to me, you know what? I believe this is what I call it, family fighting. This is what family fighting is about, right? Like, we went through convention. Everybody got to pick. It's the same thing in primaries. Everybody got to pick who they supported, why they supported it. I endorsed Michon. I had a number of people who wanted to fight me about it. And I made it very clear. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to end relationships over my support for who I think would be the next party chair. I've made it very clear. I am on team win in 2026, and whoever is elected state party chair at the end, whether it's the person I support or one of the other two, I am going to be on board doing everything that I possibly can to help them be successful in 2026, because it's such a historic, important cycle. And that's just kind of politics, right? There's always going to be winners and losers. It's how we all act after that and being able to come together. That's really important. So Saturday, if you had your pulse on the grassroots, probably wasn't too shocked. I think people are absolutely pissed off and tired of losing. Oh, I am. I don't think people wanted to rehash the 22 cycle again. And I think Mashawn's co-chair was a pick that kind of hurt her with the grassroots because she had to go on defense trying to explain his past donation history with Democrats. And I think the delegates are in a place where they are ready to stop losing elections. They want to defeat Democrats and no questions moving forward. That's the expectations that they set for Jim Runstead as party chair, is to put us in a position to win up and down the ballot in 26.
Yeah, everything you said is just spot on. And just to reflect back on, it's been, going through this, and just like we talked about before the interview started, I'm still like new to politics, right? I just 5 years in as of right now. And in the beginning, you do take, a lot of people are new because the pandemic, I like to call it. A lot of people were awakened and start getting involved and start being a delegate and running for different positions and everything else. So there is a lot of emotion still in politics, I feel, and people take things a lot like very personal. And you're right, you shouldn't. Like at the end of the day, we're all Republicans, and just like you just said, I'm going to give Jim a shot. Here's where I kind of draw the line with things, though, is like, hey, look, I'm going to give you a shot, but don't think I'm not going to hold you accountable either. Because if we reflect back to Christina Carommo after she won, I gave her a shot. I said, okay, that's who we want. Let's analyze it, what she's going to do, being a good CEO and everything else. And as she kind of went down the path, there start to be chinks in the armor and things start to happen. And there's the blame game and the finger pointing. And then there's the drama between her and her team. And then there's the backstabbing and then who's right, who's wrong, all this stuff, which we don't need. But I want to talk about accountability with you. What are some milestones that, for the people who don't know, who aren't aware how the Michigan GOP's kind of roll in elections, what are some milestones that we need to see over the next 6 months, and then definite milestones, what we need to see in a year with the chair and with the party that lets us know that we're on the right track to dominating 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it over and over and over again. The number one job of the Michigan Republican Party is to win elections, right? It's a political infrastructure. It's not your church. It's not your social club. It's not here to play nice in the sandbox. The political, MIGOP is a political apparatus that is there to win elections. And so how do you do that? In my opinion, there's three main things that they have to do. One, they have to raise money. Two, they have to build coalitions. And three, they have to build the campaign infrastructure to do what state party needs to do to support candidates, specifically some of the candidates that we have running in 2026, like our Supreme Court candidates, our Secretary of State, and our Attorney General candidates, who rely very, very heavily on support from the Michigan Republican Party to get across the finish line. So over the next 6 months, the number one job of the state party chair is going to be to raise money. That's it. Point blank, end stop, raise money. Start to raise as much money as possible. Now, when you start to look at the amount of money that's going to move through Michigan this cycle, some of it is so insane that it just makes your head spin.
Yeah.
So, and I think you had somebody else on, I think it might have even been Mashawn afterwards, that was talking about the amount of money that is going to go through the state party apparatus. Campaign finance, dealing with money, is very complicated. You have state dollars that the state party has to raise. They have federal dollars that the state party has to raise. There's pass-through dollars that are going to come from the RNC and the NRCC to support people like Tom Barrett and all of the other alphabet soup organizations out of DC. There are corporate dollars that the party is going to raise specifically this year related to Mackinac Island in the conference. I think that's something that we should definitely talk about today, because let's just be real, the Mackinac Island conference of 2 years ago was not what it should have been, and headed into 26, that's going to be a huge thing for, Senator Runstead as the chair. But really raising money over the next 6 months, Senator Runstead and his team are going to have to buckle down and start to bring in every single dollar that they possibly can. I personally think the actual state party apparatus is going to need to raise between $5 and $10 million to help support the candidates and the staff that are going to need to be working at MIGOP this cycle. That's just the party apparatus itself. Now, when you start to look at all the pass through dollars that are going to come through state party, you're talking tens of millions of dollars. You're talking anywhere between 50 and $100 million that are going to funnel through MIGOP from the national level to help support either the US Senate seat specifically. I think Michigan is one of the most important states in 26. I think making sure that we have a Republican governor is important, but I am very bulldogish that I would probably give up the governor's seat to ensure that we win the Secretary of State's seat. I think that that personally is one of the most important positions that's up for election in 26, specifically because the next Secretary of State who is elected is going to manage the next redistricting cycle. And if we allow another Democrat to control the next redistricting cycle again, the maps in the Michigan House and Michigan Senate are going to get really tough for Republicans to win. And that just sets us up on a further road to have a harder time to maintaining majorities in the state House and the state Senate. So I think that that seat is probably the most important position on the ticket in 26 for Republicans, along with our state Supreme Court seats. And those three spots specifically are absolutely, they will not win without party help. They have to have financial help from the party to get across the finish line.
That's why I love having you on, because you bring such a depth of knowledge with what needs to happen. And people don't understand that. They're like, hey, governor and Senate, that's on their mind right away, right? But everything you just said is so important for future. I mean, we tend to be very emotional in this election cycle, and sometimes we lose that foresight and vision for playing the long game, which we all know the Dems are very good at. They're
100%.
very good at playing the long game. Now, you mentioned the tens of millions of dollars, just basically to keep the lights on. You said 8 to 10, right? That's just for the infrastructure. What was Pete, our previous chair, what did he raise, and what was the number of millions of dollars that was running through the party? Do you know that number?
Yeah, so I think Pete raised somewhere between 3 and 5 million directly into the party to help do things, and then there was about 30 to 35 million in pass-through dollars that went through state party this past cycle.
Okay, I mean that's a lot of money to be able to raise. So that's one milestone, right? Which I think especially with grassroots, I think when you start talking about money, everybody's butthole starts to pucker, right? They get really quiet. They don't want to talk about fundraising. It just, because a lot of people can't fundraise, and it's very hard for them to fundraise. And I always love when I hear candidates, that want my support, and they get a hold of me and they say, hey, well, I want you to help me fundraise. And I just reflect back, and I've never asked anyone to say, hey, I need you to help me fundraise. I just went out and did it. And in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, Reagan, because like I said, I'm new to this, if you can't inspire and motivate people to buy into what you're trying to do, I think that's a problem. You shouldn't be running for any level of office if you can't inspire people to donate to your campaign. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree. You first and foremost have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in your mission. And I've known Jim for a long time. He's going to do that, right? He's an incredibly conservative senator. He has won, his race for Senate back in 2018 was one of the most contested Senate seats in the state of Michigan. He raised a ton of money. He ran a great campaign. Having that underneath his belt and having that gone through that experience, I think is going to benefit him being the state party chair. But if you don't believe in yourself, and if you don't believe in the mission that you're trying to get people to buy into, they're not going to cut you a check. They're not going to send you their hard-earned dollars. And politics is all marketing. I mean, it's, everybody can sit here, and if I say melt in your mouth, not in your hand, you're going to know exactly that I'm talking about M&Ms. And so marketing is what politics is, but instead of marketing a product, you're marketing a person. And that cost money. Like it or not, money is involved in politics. I had somebody a couple of months ago say, well, I think we should just put a limit on what everybody can spend. And if you're running for the state senate, you can spend $50,000, or you shouldn't be allowed to spend more than what you would make in that office. So a state senator makes $72,000, you shouldn't be able to spend that. And then, like, okay, let's take our free market conservative principles and let's map that out. So are you going to tell the radio station that they can't charge a political candidate for ads, or that they can only charge them X dollars for ads? Are you going to tell the printer that makes the postcards and the signs and the wires, you can only charge a certain amount, or you have to give it to politicians for free? Like, we don't set price controls on all this. The free market sets price controls on all this. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's not out of control spending in politics. I heard somebody say that they think the amount of money, I heard a very good friend of mine who's a consultant estimate that there's going to be $400 million that moves through Michigan next cycle between the governor's race, the Supreme Court seats, and the US Senate seat. That is a ton of money. $400 million is an insane amount of money in politics, just in one state. So I get it, but the facts are the facts. It costs money to advertise. It costs money to be on TV. It costs money to send out a mailer. And people, if you are watching this podcast, you instantaneously are 100 times more educated and more involved than the traditional everyday voter, who genuinely, literally, normally doesn't even tune in until about 2 weeks before they're going to go check the boxes, voting at the ballot box. Everyday people simply just do not pay attention until the end. And then in the end, everything, it's like, I always say, it's like getting married and having a baby. If you go to Babies R Us, everything is 10 times more expensive because they know that parents want to buy the things. If you're getting married, if I go to a bakery and ask for a birthday cake, it's going to cost me $100. If I tell them it's for a bridal shower or a wedding, it's going to cost me $350. It's the same thing in politics.
Amen. So we have obviously fundraising. That's one milestone. And you talked about, a coalition. A bold coalition. What does that entail? Like, so 6 months in here, what should we be seeing?
Yeah, so a lot of times when we say coalitions now, people think that we're talking about coalitions within the Republican Party, and we're not. Michigan is not a red state. Although a lot of our state is conservative, Donald Trump won Michigan because he focused on building out into coalitions, specifically in Southeast Michigan, in areas like Dearborn and Hamtramck, building relationships outside of the traditional Republican Party tent that helped him not just win Michigan by 10,000 votes, but win Michigan by tens of thousands of votes this cycle. And that's really, when I talk about building coalitions, I'm talking about we need to be focusing on building the relationships outside of the traditional Republican Party tent in places like Southeast Michigan, and continuing on the foundation that the president set in the 24 cycle and moving them to support us in 26. Those people are not going to just become Republicans and vote for Republican candidates just because. We are going to have to do a lot of serious work to get them to turn out for us in 26 and get them to check the Republican box in 26. And so those are the coalitions that we're really talking about. Look at what the president's team and Musk's did, focusing on the Amish population over in Pennsylvania. Michigan has a substantial Amish population that we should be engaging in the 26 cycle because it's really important for them, I believe, that we change direction. When you talk about government intervention, they do not like the government intervening in their lives.
No, they do not. I have a lot of Amish patients, and you hit the nail on the head with two things that I want to cover. Number one is the Dearborn community in Southeast Michigan. I was one of the first Republican candidates to actually go in there and have conversations. Dr. Sam Fawaz took me through, and I sat down with a lot of the leaders. I sat down even with Osama Simblani and had a great conversation with him. A 15-minute conversation turned into an hour and a half. And not a lot of Republicans went into that community since 9/11. And they were very vocal on that and said, you guys never come in, the Democrats always do. And you're right. That was one of President Trump's strengths, is going in there and just listening to these folks and realize, holy cow, they're more conservative than we are, right? And then move
Correct.
into the Amish. I mean, again, the family values and everything else. I mean, it was funny when I had one of my Amish folks come in. It was during just right after the pandemic was starting to close or simmer down a little bit. And I say, hey, how'd you guys make it through all this? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, did anything affect you? He's like, nothing affected us. And I was like, nothing? He's like, no, we went to work every day, lived our lives as we always do. And I said, why do you think that is? He's like, because we don't watch TV. And I was like, you're right. Brainwashed, right? And that's
Correct.
Unfortunately where a lot of society is. So yeah, you're spot on with building those coalitions and having great conversations. And people have to remember too, and we say this time and time again, like, look, if we don't have to agree on everything, we don't. And what really makes me angry is when you hear some people that are set in their ways and they refuse to have conversation. And if you don't agree with me 100% of the time, then you're a rhino and you're a wannabe Republican. You hear all those kind of garbage words. And Mike Rogers, great example. Because people voted for Trump, and there are social media influencers out there, and we all know who they are, were basically stating, I'm not voting for Mike, and you shouldn't either. And when you have a few of these folks say that, people tend to listen, and they voted for Trump. They left their vote for Mike Rogers at home, didn't vote for anyone, which to vote for Democrats. And now we're stuck with slocking probably for the foreseeable future. Because, once you get in there, especially in this state, you're not going to dethrone an incumbent. It's very hard.
Absolutely. Correct.
Can you hit on that? Because I think people need to understand that. Like, you can't be going out there. And I always say this, if a Republican wins in the primary, they're going to get my support.
Yeah. I mean, first off, I like it when people call me a rhino, but they spell it with an H, because then I know they actually really don't even know what it means. And I'm like, nope, that's an animal in Africa. And so, but okay, I digress. Listen, I'm incredibly conservative, and I wish that we could have a purist conservative Republican, constitutional Republican elected across Michigan for every office. But you know what? I'm one person. And a life lesson that my dad taught me is your opinion is as important as somebody else's. Everybody has an opinion. No one cares about yours. And so we have to elect the most conservative candidate for the district that they're representing that can actually win an election. I think this is something that Democrats do a lot better than we do as Republicans, is they understand that majority matters. Look at what happened in Colorado. Look at the model that they've implemented, and that is exactly what they're implementing here in Michigan. It's exactly what they're implementing on a national scale. People tend to, I don't want to say they get mad, but like, let's take a quick second and talk about John Fetterman. There's a reason why Democrats, after he had a stroke, were going to make sure that he was elected to the US Senate, because he was a math equation. He was in a seat that they needed to win to get to majority, to control the majority in the US Senate. Had he been a candidate for a seat in a state that didn't matter, they would have sacrificed him. They wouldn't have cared. They wouldn't have spent money on him. But because he was in the seat of Pennsylvania and part of the math equation to get to majority, they were going to do whatever they had to make sure that he wins. Republicans, on the other hand, we have this thing, I don't know whether it's, oh.
No, you're okay. I can hear you. You broke up a little bit.
I can't see you. You see me?
I can see you,
Okay.
but you're frozen a little bit. I can still hear you though. There you are.
There we go. So, Republicans tend to do this thing where they want to get idealistic. My candidate didn't win, or I don't agree with them 100% on every issue. I don't agree with my husband on 100% of things, and I'm going to stay married to him. Like, we have to stop this purist voting trend where if somebody that we don't agree with, but we agree with them 90% of the time, that isn't good enough. I don't understand. Mike Rogers lost the US Senate race because Trump Republicans refused to support him at the end of the day. And the third party candidates running down ballot siphoned away substantial number of votes from him. And as a result, you're 100% spot on. Alyssa Slotkin will be a Michigan U.S. Senator until she decides to either retire or run for something else. There is no beating her. We will not beat her. She will do a phenomenal job. She was my congresswoman for 4 years. I watched her. She's very good. She represents her area. She knows how to go out and talk to people. She knows how to build support. And as a result of people not being able to get over whatever they didn't like about Mike, we're now stuck with somebody who is going to vote against us 100% of the time.
Yeah.
You know, there are votes Mike has taken that I didn't like in the past, but I would definitely rather have Mike Rogers sitting in the US Senate helping Trump get his agenda across the finish line right now versus Slotkin, who is not going to be any help at all.
100% spot on, because that's what 2026, everyone that's waking up every morning, at least on the conservative side, even the independents, are loving what's going on with Doge and Kash Patel, and now Dan Bongino's involved, and we're celebrating, we're excited. Hey, guess what? That all can come to a halt in 2026 unless we keep the majority.
But I'm going to take it another step further. I think Congress needs to get their act in gear. I think they need to get their poop in a groove, and I think they need to start acting. Trump has issued over, I think we're getting close to 300 executive orders.
Yeah.
Guys, let me tell you what, it literally doesn't matter if Congress does not put these things into federal law.
Yep.
All of this, everything he has done can literally be wiped away with one fell swoop of a pen in 2028 when a new president is elected. Congress has to start taking the executive orders that Trump is issuing, and they have to start passing them. They have, I don't want to sound offensive, but what in the hell are they doing? Trump is running circles around them. They haven't even begun to enact 10% of what he's done, and their clock is ticking. We are on razor thin majorities in the House, and now you have Byron Daniels who wants to go off and run for governor of Florida. You have other people in the House from all over the country who are talking about taking off to run for other offices.
Yeah.
They don't have time to waste. And it is so imperative for the future. I am mind blown. Like, I thought Trump was going to move fast. I had no idea that he was going to be this upfront, in our face, in being such a leader in pushing back on the progressive movement, putting America first on a national stage, reining back in government spending. And I am mind blown with the job that he's done. But I'm also very cognizant that it really means very little if Congress doesn't wrap their arms around and support the policies by putting them in statute. And their clock is ticking to do that. And it's ticking fast. 2 years seems like a long time until you work in the system, and it goes by like a blink of an eye.
Yes.
And in reality, the US House, they only have 12 months to really get something done, because especially people like Tom Barrett, he is going to have to work harder to keep his seat in 26 than he did to win the seat in 24. It's going to cost him more money. It's going to cost him more work. It's an off cycle. Usually, whoever the sitting president is, their party has a higher hurdle to clear. Tom Barrett is going to be in a dogfight to keep his congressional seat, which means come January, February, March of next year, guess what? He's now in campaign mode to keep his seat. So they only really have this year, 2025, to get a lot of this enacted. And that clock is ticking, and it's ticking away. Really, they haven't even been able to pass a budget bill.
Yes.
And we're basically in March. So
you're spot on. And I love how you hit on people that are in Congress right now, and they use their position for a stair stepping, right? They stair step into the next position available. And there's even rumors even in the state of Michigan that John James is considering a run for governor, which I already came out of my platform, and I disagree. If he's thinking about running, I think he needs to stay in Congress. I think he has to have more foresight of what the country needs right now. And I think John should stay in to where he's at. That's just my opinion. Everybody else has another opinion, but we need people that are going to put the country and their constituents first and not their political career. And
yeah,
it's frustrating.
I mean, it can be. I mean, look at Governor Whitmer. She is clearly off doing who knows what, whether it's
Yeah.
trying to run for president, whether it's trying to win a pundit's position on MSNBC. It's, whether she's trying to set herself up to be who knows what, but she is clearly checked out as governor of Michigan, and she's moving on to her next thing. So, yeah, I mean, that can be frustrating, but I think right now we have to have a recognition that our majorities on the federal level to support the president are very narrow, and they have to start acting. They've
So-
got to get moving, and I think they got to get moving a lot faster than what they already are.
So how do we, the people, make sure that happens? Like what kind of, do we just call them? I mean, do social media influencers like you and I start to push this kind of stuff out and say, hey, what the hell are you doing, Congress? I mean, what's the plan to get that to happen, Meghan?
Well, I think it's a mix of both. I think right now everyone's just so excited that they're watching the president issue all these executive orders that they forget about the next step. Again, it's that long-term vision foresight of we have to look past today, and we have to try to. I always analyze politics on both a legislative and a campaign cycle as a chess game. And sometimes people get mad at me when I refer to it as a chess game, but that's what it is. And the way that I describe it to people is like, imagine a bunch of chessboards stacked on top of each other. And so on the first level, you have a normal chessboard. And then on top of that is another chessboard, but this time there's 4 games of chess in one. And then on top of that is another chessboard, and there's 2 games of chess on that. And then there's another one on top with 1. And then there's another one stacked on top with 3. And then here we are looking down upon all the boards, and you're trying to literally vision each game at each level and then predict the next 10 moves out. And that's really what politics is, right? You're trying to predict the next 10 steps ahead of the Democrats. And so I just don't think we've gotten there yet. I think we are just so excited that we actually have a president who is doing something. I know I am. We actually have a leader who's doing what they say, promises made, promises kept. I think really, calling our federal officials and telling them that we support them enacting, the president's executive orders into statute is very helpful. Being supportive and just letting them know that that's what we expect so that these things can't be undone in the future, I think would be helpful.
Amen. And obviously building the infrastructure is the last point that you made in with the Michigan GOP. I want to go back into that just to let people know what the milestones are, because just like I said before, I'm willing to give anyone a shot to do the job that they've been elected to do, but there has to be some accountability. And I think too, the accountability has to be all around. If for some reason a job's not being done, okay, the accountability is the team that put together, but also the accountability has to be the people who put them in. Like,
yeah,
all those accountability markers have to be in place. And so to build that kind of infrastructure, what should we be seeing here 6 to 12 months in?
I mean, winning elections is a secret sauce. You do not win elections on hope and prayer, contrary to what some people in our party believe. It's a math equation, there's strategy involved in it, and you have to know how to set up the structure and set up the team, set up the plans that we need to win. And a lot of that happens in the off cycle. If we get to February, March, April, May of 2026, and we don't have those things in place, we're screwed. We're done. Like, we are way behind the 8 ball. So this starts today. Building the infrastructure starts while the dollars are being raised. And when we talk about building the infrastructure, heading into 26, we're really talking about the ability to connect with pro-Trump, low propensity voters who come out and vote for the president every 4 years, and then they don't come out to vote again. If you go back to 2022, there were over 150,000 people that voted in 2020 for President Trump in Michigan, that did not come out and vote for anybody in the governor's race. Those are low propensity voters. Those are people who traditionally and historically, we know because we have their vote history, only come out and vote for the president. Those are also the people that a lot of traditionally checked the box for President Trump and didn't vote for Mike Rogers or Alyssa Slotkin on the US Senate seat. They just left it blank. It is our job to get them out to vote. I've argued for a couple of cycles now that we're no longer into persuasive politics. Like if I walked up to you and said, who do you support and why? There's no persuading you that a Democrat is going to be the correct answer. And for most people, they're in a camp. They're either going to vote for Republicans or Democrats right now. There's no persuading them one side or another. We are now in an election model, like it or not, under the new constitutional amendments, where we have 45 days that ballots and votes can be cast in Michigan, whether it be absentee voting, whether it be early voting, whether it be election day voting. And the infrastructure that has to be established is the infrastructure needed to ensure that we get the most Republicans to vote in those 45 days by whichever method we possibly can. So whether it be absentee or early voting or in-person voting on election day, that takes a lot of work to do. It takes a lot of data. It takes a lot of contact with those people to know what makes them go vote. Like what is going to make Joe Smith, who voted for President Trump in 2024, get out to the ballot and vote for a Republican governor in 2026. You just don't show up on Joe's door and say, go vote in 2026. That takes multiple contacts, multiple conversations, and figuring out what is the issue that's going to compel him and understand why it's important to go vote. That's what Democrats do very well. Right now in 2025, Democrats through organizations across the state are going to spend this year doing door-to-door voter contact, but they're going to do it on issue ID. They're going to go knock on your door and they're going to ask you what's important to you. And then they're going to use that data to do another contact and tell you, hey, did you know that the candidate running for this office cares about this issue too? And then as they get closer to the election, they're going to do it again and contact that voter again and remind them that candidate X, Y, and Z supports whatever issue they care about. That is how detailed the other side gets on voter contact. 2024 was the first time that I actually saw Republicans doing that here in Michigan through the president's campaign and some outside federal super PACs that came into Southeast Michigan. There were some organizations specifically in state house races. If you look at Riley Lightning's district, if you look at Ron's district over there in Macomb, where he defeated a Democrat, there was a lot of that hands-on, door-to-door voter contact, repetitive voter contact that helped them flip those seats. It's why Michigan was the only legislature in the entire country that flipped from, Democrat to Republican. And I think that the state party infrastructure has to start, Senator Runstead has to start building the infrastructure today to do that outreach again in 26.
Amen.
And again, because we have more candidates that are going to rely on it. In 24, the president had his own infrastructure. In 26, the Secretary of State's races, the Attorney General race, we now have a 6-1 Democrat majority on our state Supreme Court. I can't tell you how detrimental that's going to be to Republicans for the next 10 years. It's going to take us at least 2, if not 3 cycles to try to even win back a majority on our Supreme Court. It's going to cost us tens of millions of dollars. It's going to cost, we have to find the right candidates to run. And they're going to need the support to get across the finish line. Last year, our Supreme Court candidates were outspent 100-1. Democrats spent over $10 million electing their Supreme Court candidates, and we barely broke $250,000.
Again, they played the long game, and they know they're good at it. And
right.
You're right on, man. Like you said, Senator Rumstead, and I think we need to bring this up because this is one of my concerns with Jim. That and I love Jim. I've known Jim for years. I love his voting record. Great guy. He's going to be trying to work 2 jobs. Is that correct, or was that a rumor?
From my understanding and what I've heard him say, he does plan to stay in the state senate and do the state party chairs race or state party chairs job at the same time.
And I'm just like looking and hearing everything that you said, and there's a lot more on the table of what you have to do. That is a concern to me, just with the amount of work that it's going to take. Now, if he can do it, awesome. And if he can reach those milestones that you kind of put out there, I'm fired up. Let's go. You know, he's the Energizer Bunny on caffeine, kind of like our president is. You know, I don't think the guy sleeps. I think he's half alien. I don't even know if he's 100% human. To be that old, and he is old, he's up there, right? And to do what he's doing countrywide, I mean, run a statewide race is exhausting. I mean, he motivates me every day. No doubt about it. But what are some of the kind of concerns that we need to be aware of with him, you know, working both these jobs? I mean, what are the Democrats going to try to do, Meghan?
Democrats are going to Democrat, and they're going to try to trap him. But I mean, let's just be very clear about that. If he doesn't think that he's not going to have somebody that walks into his state office, whether he thinks it's a friend or whether he doesn't know, whether they pose themselves as a constituent, they may be trying to record him. The Democrats are absolutely going to try to trap him into using state party time and resources for political party purposes. And why is that a big deal? And it all goes back to Jocelyn Benson. One of the biggest complaints that I hear Republicans say is Jocelyn Benson is the sitting Secretary of State and she's running her own election. Can I digress for a minute on that really quick? Because I get so peeved when I hear people say Jocelyn Benson has to resign as Secretary of State. Give me a break. Ruth Johnson was sitting Secretary of State, ran her own reelection campaign for that position. I did not hear a single person back in 2022 say that Jocelyn Benson needed to resign as Secretary of State to run for reelection as Secretary of State. Every 4 years, every county clerk, every township clerk run for reelection, and they are the ones who are actually administering the own election on the local level. We have never come close to demanding that they resign because they have a conflict of interest that they're running their own election for reelection. Now, do I think Jocelyn Benson is going to try to put her thumb on the scale? Yes, I do. I'm not naive. Like, I understand that she's going to use that position to try to benefit herself, but that comes into making sure that MIGOP, because they're the entity that really should be working to hold her accountable through the legal means. Now, here's where the long game sucks, because guess what? All of the legal means to hold Jocelyn Benson accountable are going to end up in the state Supreme Court. And we have allowed the state Supreme Court to be taken over by Democrats. So I get it. It's not the best solution, but it's the reality that we have to live with. So there's my digression. I don't think Benson should have to resign as Secretary of State to run for governor. Like, we don't demand anybody else does it. We're just playing stupid politics when we say that.
I'm just saying she needs to resign because she sucks. That's what I'm saying. I mean, when you let a Chinese national vote in our election and it counts, like, your job should be done. You're fired. Right?
I was talking to somebody the other day and I'm like, it's so easy to vote in Michigan. There's no reason why you don't vote. You have 45. It's so easy. A Chinese national can do it and their vote still counts. She definitely, to say she should resign because she's incompetent is an accurate statement. To say she should resign because she's running for governor, that's just playing stupid politics. I digress. Now, back to Senator Runstead and being state party chair. The best thing that he can do is just draw a clear, bright line. This is his state Senate staff. This is his MIGOP staff. They do not intermix. They do not deal with issues, very much like you do on the federal level. If you call somebody in a congressman's office to talk about campaign stuff, they literally respond with, I can't talk. I'm not on the campaign side. I can't answer that. I can't help you. You have to contact the campaign. How do we do that? Google it. I don't know. That would be the best thing that Senator Runstead could do to avoid what we know is coming from the Democrats, who like to play dirty politics. They control the majority. Winnie Brinks has access to every email, all the things in the Senate. I don't know the privacy, but I can tell you as somebody who has worked in the Senate, there's not a single thing that I put into an email that I wouldn't want put by Craig Mauger or Chad Livengood on the front page of the Detroit News any day of the week and twice on Sunday. That's how I operate on my state devices. And that's if he operates that way, if he draws that bright line where his Senate staff, if they're asked about party politics, say, I work in a Senate office. If you have a constituent concern, I can help with that. If you have a state scheduling request, we can help with that. If you need to schedule the senator for an outside activity, you have to get a hold of somebody else. He'll do just fine. I think he's going to do that. I know the people that work in his staff. I know their ethics are above reproach. So I think he'll draw that bright line. But it's coming. Like the Democrats are going to try to do. That's the level and the tactics that they're going to take. So we just have to be aware of that and be very cautious.
Because obviously their policies and what they stand for is not trending well with middle America. I mean, correct. They have doubled down on their radical ideologies and everything else. That's for sure. We have a few more minutes before you got to get going. And I want to make sure that we hit on something that I'm very passionate about. And I love watching you tweet about is kind of like your homesteading and you and your daughter hunting and everything else. Obviously being a chiropractor, number one, I believe very strongly in the Make America Healthy Again. I'm very excited that Robert Kennedy's involved. And so, like, what got you into hunting? I never asked you this question. Like, did your dad take you hunting when you were little? Like, how did you get so passionate about this?
Okay, so I'm gonna truth bomb drop a couple of things on you here. So yeah, I grew up on a farm. I am a farm girl. We bred and raised thoroughbred racehorses. I had about 70 acres that I just could romp on, and I did. I distinctly remember one day I wore my dad a brand new pair of muck boots out, and I wandered way out into the back of our property, and I got them stuck in mud, like almost quicksand mud, and I could not get them out. I tried in the rain for like 3 hours, and then I finally had to paddle my little way home barefoot and tell dad that his brand new boots were stuck back in the mud. But that was me. So I did start hunting about 16 years old. I went deer hunting with my dad, and then I didn't hunt again for a really long time as an adult. I've always been an outdoorsy. I am the kid who, if the whole transgender thing had been a thing in the 80s and 90s, I would have been a target. I was a tomboy. I did not wear dresses. You would not find me dead in a skirt. I only wore jeans. I wore my hair up in a ponytail. My parents had to force me to take a shower because that was overrated.
You're a tomboy.
I'm a tomboy. Yeah. I loved all things,
Make tomboys great again. That's what I want to say. Make tomboys great again. Okay, go ahead. I love it.
100%. So, stopped hunting. And then I have some personal things in my past that I've really struggled with. One of them being my weight and my health. That has been a literal lifelong battle for me. You would probably never look at it looking at it, but I used to weigh over 300 pounds at one point in my life.
Holy cow.
I know. I'll actually text you. You can't put it up online, but I'll actually text you a photo when we're done as proof because nobody believes me. But I have genuinely struggled with my health since I was basically in middle school. And I have a daughter who's 10, and I've watched her, and I've seen a lot of the same struggles that I had at 10, 11, 12. I started to watch her come into. I've been there. It sucks to try to have an issue where you're trying to eat right and you're still struggling with your weight. And so about a year ago, I just got to a breaking point where as a mom, I was like, I'm done. I don't understand why we have chemicals in all of the things that we eat. We're trying to eat as healthy as we can, and my kids are still struggling. And I decided that I was going to do anything that I possibly could to put my kids on a healthy path where my daughter specifically wouldn't have to go through the things that I went through to get to where I am today. And part of that was completely changing our diets. Part of that was getting her to enjoy the outdoors. And so that led me to go back into hunting. And so I decided that she's going to be my partner in crime. We actually have a Facebook page called Camo and Crosshairs, where we're just a mom and a daughter. people walk in our house and they see the deer mounts, they see the turkey mounts, they see all the things, and they look at my husband and they start to talk to him about it, and he just looks back at him and he goes, "Yep, nope, that's my wife's and daughter." He is a city boy. He does not like dirt. He does not hunt. If I asked him to go hunting with me, he would probably offer to cut our grass with scissors, versus actually sitting out there. My son is identical to him. So, Mark golfs and I hunt and we fish and we do all the things. So it's been it's been a really incredible journey over the past year. I have noticed a huge difference in the health of our family. We have a goal in 2025 not to buy any meat from the grocery store. So far, we have been successful. My daughter and I put 10 deer in the freezer ourselves last year to try to help, have more organic, homegrown. We know exactly where it came from. Uh, Her and I do all of the field dressing ourselves. Our goal for next year is to learn how to do processing ourselves so that we might be able to just do the whole thing from start to finish. We grow rabbits. So I think we currently have 25 rabbits sitting at home. And all of them have names. They're like crock pot pie, chicken and biscuits, because I remind my children that at any point in time, any of the rabbits could end up as dinner.
Absolutely. Man, that's a whole other show. I would love to have you back on and dive into some of those things because that people don't understand. Number one, that's how you take control of your own health. Don't
Yeah.
rely on the medical profession. I mean, I can go on and on and on about that. Obviously, we don't have the time to get into that, but I want to bring you back on and we'll put politics on the back shelf. And
There
I
we
want
go.
to talk about the homesteading and your Facebook page and everything else. And that's amazing. Number one, great job.
Thank
Unbelievable.
you.
That's an inspiration to so many people listening because so many people, I think people need to hear your story, number one, and how you guys are doing it because you can inspire a lot of people. And look, as a chiropractor, every pound of weight that you lose is like 4 pounds of pressure off your hip and knees. So
I have
holy cow.
horrible knees. I used to be a runner. So as I started to lose weight, I don't know, I've probably done 55 Ks, more than I can count, 10 Ks. I've done over a dozen half marathons. I've done one marathon. I always say the second one's harder than the first one because you know what you're in for.
Yep.
So I've tried to do the second one, but I'm not there. I've done a sprint distance triathlon. And my goal when I eventually have enough time in politics is one day I want to do an Ironman
Yeah.
before I end up 6 feet under. I'm not a record breaker. I was
Nope.
overweight. My knees are bad. My legs are bad. I'm not a fast runner. I'm not a fast biker. I swim like a rock. But I want to do an Ironman and cross the finish line before midnight and brag that to me, it's all mind over matter. When it comes to your physical health, I've really learned that 9 out of 10 times it's all more of a mind game than it is anything else. And if I could leave people with this one thing, because I know how frustrating it can be to try to avoid processed chemical foods, and especially people are busy, it's hard to do. We started to just make small incremental changes, over time with the products that we buy. I still have to buy cereal for my kids, but I'm a little bit more conscious about the
Yeah.
types of cereal. It's not Fruit Loops, it's not Frosted Flakes. We still have to buy pasta. But it's just making those small changes here and there, making your kids eat fruit, changing out the types of meat that you're eating for something. And a lot of people worry about the price, but I'll just say this. So I bought a quarter side of a cow that I have to go pick up here this week because my husband hates venison. I made steak 2 nights ago and he ate it and he got done and he walks in the living room and he's like, that was not steak. And I go, was it good? He goes, I'm not answering that. It was edible.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's great. So I did break down and buy him some beef. So he will be happy and he will have some cow instead of some deer. But at the end of the day, for my quarter side of a cow, putting it in my freezer, it ended up being $3.75 a pound. That's not bad. I
It's
mean,
not.
yeah, it's $800 that you have to drop all at once,
Yep.
but in the grand scheme of what you're getting at 375 a pound, it's really not that bad. The venison, even though I have my deer processed, I think it broke down to 210 a pound is what I
Yep.
ended up paying to put venison. That's super lean. It's so healthy for you. It's really not that expensive. My husband's dreading this spring because we're gonna raise a thing of meat chickens. I'm gonna do one flock, 90 birds. It's like 8 weeks start to finish. Um,
90?
yep. If I
Good.
do 90, if I do
Oh,
90 if I do 90 birds in a tractor, you're probably gonna end up with between 70 and 75 birds at the very end of it that end up making it. We'll do one big processing day. Some will be whole, some will be quartered. They'll go in the freezer, and I'll have chicken for the year.
oh, we gotta do like a series, Megan. I mean, this is absolutely fantastic. I had no idea that you were going to undertake that. I mean, you're speaking my love language right now. This is absolutely
Oh, we have pigs.
fantastic.
We have pigs coming. We have all the things. So, I mean, we are truly homesteading. I mean,
You
we
are. Yeah,
home growing as
you're
much.
almost up to that next. You're almost a farmer. You're going back to your roots. I mean, you're right there. I mean,
So,
I don't know where the next step is or what you need to see, but
mini
it sounds to
cows. I
me.
want a mini cow. If I get a mini cow, I know.
All
So
right,
there's this.
I got to ask
So
you before. What's the mini cow's name going to be?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
There's
go ahead.
this ranch down in Texas called Ponderosa. They literally breed and raise mini cows. Their auction was this past weekend. My daughter was so sad. I'm like, we have to one more year, like one more
Mhm.
year, and we can do mini cows. My secret is baking. I'm a really successful baker. My 10-year-old is a prodigy baker. She actually sells her gourmet cakes to raise money for charity.
Wow.
Um, but I've been trying to do sourdough, and this thing has been kicking my ass.
Yeah.
So stay tuned because I'm now on like my fourth or fifth try. I have a friend this week that's giving me some starter, but I'm still going to be stubborn and try to do my own on the side. So if I can successfully start to make my own bread, which it makes me feel so stupid because people have been baking bread since the beginning of time. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be this hard. Then I'll actually call myself a successful homesteader.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of these things are like a lost art, right? Like this was just
Yes.
normal day-to-day stuff for human beings, and we lost all that. That's like when you always hear about these apocalyptic scenarios, like 90% of the world will die within months, and you're like, I can see why. Like they can't make their bread, they don't know how to hunt, they don't know how to grow tomatoes. I mean, it's going to be bad. So
Correct.
that's why you should
Yes.
always own guns to protect your farm.
Well,
That's
we've got plenty of those.
Yeah, I don't have any. Mine all fell in the river. It happens. So
Sometimes those boating accidents, they get the
it,
best of us.
they do, man. Megan, thank you so much for spending a good hour with us, with your wisdom, with your knowledge. I mean, you're just a breath of fresh air, and a lot of people need to hear what you have to say. Because a lot of people don't know. I mean, you still educated me today on a variety of different issues and structure and everything else. And I think the more educated people are, the more empowered they can be with how they want to fit in. Because everybody needs to do their part in politics, whether you're the one out there running or supporting candidates and everything else. So thank you so, so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me on anytime.
And yes, I'm going to hold you to that because we're going to do a whole homesteading series with Meghan Reckling.
Let's go.
All right. Awesome. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Oh, that was probably one of my most favorite podcast interviews I have done. She's fantastic. She really is. Holy cow. How would you like, and I didn't talk to Megan about this. How would you like to have somebody of that caliber? Because to me, it sounds like she's very qualified to be the Secretary of State. I'm just saying. Sorry, Megan, to put you on the spot. See how I waited until after you got off the show to put that in there? No, man, just everything that she brings to the table. What a asset to have in the state of Michigan, in Michigan politics. I can't thank her enough. That is fantastic. And I'll continue to do my part and bring folks like her on to give you up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I liked to be a part of that today. Until next time, folks, God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan. Of course, and always, God bless these United States.